Good morning. It's Saturday morning. It's early. Everybody's sleeping. My dogs are sleeping, so hopefully you won't hear any barking like you did in the last video. And my wife is out cold, but she'll probably be getting up soon, so let's see if we can wrap this up soon. Anyway, I decided to do this video kind of as a part two to the last one where I touched upon the psychology of bodybuilding, and as part of that there was a short discussion on emotions, especially mixed emotions. So I wanted to kind of elaborate a little bit more on that in a personal way. At my age, I don't have the same aspirations. My emotions are very mixed, okay? When I was 16, I wanted to be Mr. America like everybody else that picks up a muscle magazine or has come into contact with weights. I started when I was 12 years old. I really didn't see any muscle magazines until I was around 14. So I had a year or so of training or working out with weights under my belt before I saw my first muscle magazine. But then when you see that and you say, well, that's what I'm shooting for. And at 26, yeah, you're still at it even more intensely, because at that point I owned the gym and I training with competitive bodybuilders. I've been training with and around competitive bodybuilders most of my life. Anyway, I did pretty good up until the time where I had to make a decision on whether to take drugs or not. Which brings me to an article that I found from a magazine dated May 1963. So this is from over 60 years ago. And it's titled, "The Latest Scoop, Late News Hot Off the Wires." John Blank of the Blank Research Clinic is now personally experimenting with a drug reported to promote phenomenal muscular growth. With regular training, food supplements, and a good sound nutritional, with a sound diet, John has been taking Dianabol. It's a drug distributed by Ciba Laboratories. The drug requires a prescription, and its side effects can be serious. If taken without medical supervision, the phenomenal muscular growth of Joe and Bill Pearl, it is reported, may be due in part to Dianabol. John's aim is to determine whether or not Dianabol, combined with training and good food, actually causes especially rapid muscular growth. This is from over 60 years ago. It does. It works. Okay. There's enough evidence already in over the last 60 years that these drugs work. Whether they're good for you or not, another question. While I was training in my own gym with these competitive bodybuilders, I was making some really, really good gains. And a couple of the guys were encouraging me to go see Dr. So-and-so for a prescription for Dianabol. Now, you have to remember, back then these drugs were legal. So it wasn't until around the early 90s that they became illegal. So I was toying with the idea. Eventually, I gave in to my curiosity, and I made an appointment, went to see the doctor. And after a brief discussion, he asked me, and I'm kind of paraphrasing a little bit because we're going back a long way. He asked me if I was planning to compete, and I said no. And he said, okay, so you want a prescription for Dianabol, but you're not competing. Why? And I said to him, well, I want to see if it works. I'm kind of at a, kind of hit the wall a little bit. My gains aren't coming as quickly. So he goes, take off your shirt. So I took off my shirt. He looks me over and he says, look, you look good. Okay, I'm encouraged. He goes, you look good, but you're not ready for Diana Ball. What do you mean? I said, look, you look good, but you're not planning to compete. If you were planning to compete, it would be totally out of the question because you're not ready. You look good, but you're not ready for that. I said, okay. So he said to me, what do your legs look like? Because that is the big deciding factor in most of these shows. So I drop my pants. He looks and he says, not bad, but. So come back in a year. If you still feel the same way that you do now, and you've made substantial progress over the next year, we'll talk about it. And that was that. And I left thinking, man, I'm not even good enough to take Diana Ball. So you can imagine, the kind of mixed emotions that I had. So basically what happened was over the next year, I decided I was going to really dig in and see what can happen. And over the next year, I did make progress and I did look better than I did the year before. However, I'll tell you what stopped me in my tracks. Two things. Number one of the guys was doing bench presses. One of the things that the doctor said to me is that when you take these drugs, your blood pressure is going to go up. When you lift weights, your blood pressure goes up temporarily because you're pumping blood through your body and you're making your heart work. So your blood pressure is going to go up. But then once you stop the workout, everything goes back, hopefully, to normal. So one day this guy was doing bench presses and I knew he was on drugs, and all of a sudden this gusher of blood comes spurting through his nose. And I said, oh man, at first I thought he dropped the bar on his face. Anyway, one of the side effects from taking Diana Ball or some of these other drugs is your blood pressure goes up to the point where you're going to burst a blood vessel or your nose is going to start bleeding. And I said to myself, you know what? I don't want to start screwing around with my blood pressure and going to start. And he wasn't the only one. Somebody else's nose was bleeding, not quite as bad, but I saw that happen on another occasion. So I said, you know what? I don't think I'm going to do it. But the thing that really made the final decision for me was these guys, after the show, they would disappear for 2-3 weeks. What's going on? They would come back into the gym, and I noticed that they lost everything that they gained while they were on the drugs. Maybe not everything, but there were certain changes. They went back to what would be considered normal. And in one case, he went back to being worse than he was before he started the drugs. So I shouldn't use the word worse, but he didn't look as good as he did before taking the drugs. So the whole idea of the whole being temporary didn't sit too well with me. I was happy with the way I looked, and the best compliment that I ever got was I was walking to the parking lot and I had my keys in my hand, and I dropped my keys, and there was a man and a woman sitting on a bench about 10 feet away. And as I was getting up from picking my keys up, I heard the guy say to the woman, that guy lifts weights. Now, you may not notice it. To me, sometimes I'm saying to myself, what's he looking at? And, people see what you don't see. So that made me feel pretty good. As somebody actually that I don't know, somebody noticed. So I just gave up on the idea of competing and taking the drugs and all that. There's an old saying. I think it comes from the Bible, but I'm not sure. Uh, it goes something like, who is rich? Who is wealthy? And the answer is, he who is satisfied with what he has. And the other phrase comes from Clint Eastwood from one of the Dirty Harry movies. A man has to know his limitations. Forget that propaganda about exceed your limits and go beyond your limits, and there are no limitations. There are. And the sooner you recognize them, the better. You could end up dead if you don't. Um, so anyway, yeah, I was satisfied with what I had. And like I say now, it's just about maintaining whatever strength that I have left. I'm half the man I used to be. But, I'm going to try to hold on to it and as much muscle tone as I can. But that's what I wanted to say. I wanted to kind of wrap this up anecdotally as an example of mixed emotions. But your emotions play a big part of this, your fantasies, your imagination, and all of that. So anyway, just wanted to get that out of the way before everybody gets up and my dogs start barking. All right, so you guys take care of yourselves. We'll get more and more into some of these psychological factors in future videos. So stay tuned. And if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. Got a lot to say. You don't want to miss any of it. And in the meantime, stay strong, get stronger, and stay safe. And we'll see you next time. Adios.